What if I told you that a woman vanished without a trace, her car abandoned, her phone silent, and her family left in complete terror, only for the investigation to slowly turn into what looked like a murder case? For years, police searched for answers, suspects were questioned, lives were torn apart, and one man, her own brother, lived under the shadow of suspicion. Every clue pointed towards something dark, something violent, something final. And then, just when the story felt like it had reached its tragic ending, reality delivered a twist so shocking that it feels impossible to believe. The woman everyone thought was dead walked into a police station alive. No rescue, no miracle survival story. Just a calm, ordinary moment that shattered years of assumptions. This wasn't a scene from a detective movie. This wasn't a scripted plot twist. This actually happened. True crime usually teaches us to look for a killer, a motive, and a moment where everything went wrong. But some stories don't follow the rules we expect. Some mysteries aren't about who committed a crime, but about why someone chose to disappear entirely. Tonight's story blurs the line between victim and suspect, between escape and abandonment, and between freedom and the damage left behind. It is a case filled with false conclusions, emotional pressure, and unanswered questions that linger even after the truth is revealed. The disappearance of Kristil Krug forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. Can someone walk away from their life without committing a crime and still destroy the lives of the people they leave behind? This is the real story of a disappearance that fooled investigators, devastated a family, and unfolded like a detective thriller. Except every detail is real. What if I told you that a woman vanished without warning, leaving behind her family, her identity, and her entire past, and for years, no one knew whether she was alive or dead? There was no goodbye, no explanation, no dramatic struggle caught on camera. Just silence. A silence so complete that investigators were forced to imagine the worst. Her disappearance slowly transformed from a missing person case into something darker, something more disturbing, until it began to feel like a murder mystery waiting for a body. Every unanswered question deepened the fear. Every day without contact made hope fade just a little more. And yet, hidden beneath all that uncertainty, the truth was quietly moving in a direction no one could have predicted. Kristil Krug was not famous. She wasn't wealthy or powerful. She was a mother, a daughter, a sister, and to most people who knew her, she was just another ordinary person trying to survive the pressures of everyday life. She lived a relatively normal existence, balancing family responsibilities and personal struggles, none of which seemed extreme enough to explain what would eventually happen. There were no obvious warning signs that she was planning to disappear. No secret countdown. No dramatic confession. To the people closest to her, Kristil was present in their lives, involved in daily routines, and very much real. That's what made her disappearance so terrifying. When someone unstable disappears, people understand. When someone troubled vanishes, people suspect a breakdown. But when someone who appears ordinary suddenly vanishes, the imagination fills the gaps with horror. The day Kristil went missing did not begin like the opening of a tragedy. There were no raised voices, no emergency calls, no chaotic scenes. She simply left, and then she didn't come back. Hours passed, then days. Phone calls went unanswered. Messages were never read. Her family began to feel that creeping panic that starts as denial and slowly turns into dread. Maybe she needed space. Maybe her phone was lost. Maybe she would show up tomorrow. But tomorrow came and went, and Kristil was still gone. When her car was eventually found abandoned, that hope collapsed. A car doesn't walk away on its own. A car left behind means something stopped someone from continuing forward, or they chose not to. Police were called, and the case officially became an investigation. At first, it was treated like many missing persons cases. Interviews, timelines, last known locations. Officers retraced her steps, spoke to family members, co-workers, and friends, asking the same painful questions again and again. When was the last time you saw her? Did she seem upset? Did she mention leaving? Each question carried an unspoken implication that someone might know more than they were saying. But no matter how much pressure was applied, nothing concrete surfaced. Kristil had simply vanished. No evidence of a struggle. No financial trail. No digital footprint. It was as if she had been erased. As weeks turned into months, the investigation shifted. When someone disappears and no clues appear, police begin preparing for outcomes no one wants to say out loud. Statistically, the longer a person is missing, the less likely they are to be alive. That reality began to shape the investigation. Detectives started asking harder questions, looking closer at the people closest to Kristil. And in cases like this, attention often falls on family. Not because family members are guilty, but because they are statistically the most likely to know something. This is where the story began to take a devastating turn. Kristil's brother became a focus of the investigation. Not because there was clear evidence against him, but because suspicion needs somewhere to land. Investigators scrutinized his behavior, his statements, his reactions. Normal grief was interpreted as guilt. Confusion was seen as inconsistency. Silence was viewed as avoidance. The pressure was relentless. Interrogations stretched on. Subtle suggestions became accusations. And slowly, a narrative formed, one that painted him as a potential suspect in his own sister's disappearance. Imagine living every day knowing that people believe you may have killed someone you love, while you yourself are desperate for answers. The emotional toll was unbearable. For years, the case remained unsolved. Media attention faded, but the pain did not. Kristil's family lived in a permanent state of grief without closure. They mourned without a body. They questioned without answers. Every holiday, every birthday, every ordinary moment was haunted by the same thought. Is she alive somewhere? Is she suffering, or is she already gone? Meanwhile, the investigation sat frozen in uncertainty, unable to move forward and unable to let go. The story felt incomplete, unresolved, and tragically familiar. Then, without warning, reality rewrote the entire narrative. Years after her disappearance, Kristil Krug walked into a police station, alive.com, breathing, not rescued, not found. She introduced herself under a different name, living under an entirely new identity. She had no idea she was the subject of a massive investigation. No idea her family believed she was dead. No idea her brother had been suspected of murder. The moment officers realized who she was, everything collapsed at once. The theories, the accusations, the assumptions. The case wasn't a murder mystery. It wasn't a crime scene waiting to be discovered. It was something far more complicated and unsettling. Kristil explained that she had chosen to leave. She had reinvented herself, started over, and lived an entirely separate life. Her disappearance was not the result of violence, but of personal struggle. Mental health played a critical role. She was not running from the law. She was running from herself. And while no crime had technically been committed, the consequences of her choice had been devastating. Her family had lived in agony. Her brother's life had been nearly destroyed. Years of emotional damage could not be undone with a single explanation. When the truth became public, reactions were mixed. Some felt relief that she was alive. Others felt anger, betrayal, and confusion. How could someone walk away and let their loved one suffer like that? Was it an act of survival or an act of selfishness? The law had clear boundaries. Kristil had broken none. But morality is far less simple. The story sparked debate across the country, forcing people to confront uncomfortable questions about personal freedom, responsibility, and the ripple effects of our choices. This case challenges the way we think about disappearances. We are trained to search for villains, to demand justice, to expect clear lines between right and wrong. But Kristil Krug's story exists in the gray area, where no one wins and no ending feels satisfying. She was not a victim in the traditional sense, yet she caused real harm. Her family were victims without a crime. Her brother was innocent, yet punished by suspicion. And the truth, when it finally surfaced, didn't bring peace, only understanding mixed with pain. In the end, this is not just a story about a woman who disappeared. It's a story about how fragile identity can be, how powerful the human mind is, and how easily assumptions can destroy lives. It reminds us that sometimes the most shocking twists don't come from evil intentions, but from deeply human struggles that go unseen until it's too late. Kristil Krug didn't vanish because someone hurt her. She vanished because she was hurting. And that is what makes this story feel like a detective movie, except every word of it is real.